I'm not. What are you talking about?
Oh, I saw her get in his truck and then kiss him and drive off. That was like what, like a month ago?
Are you kidding me?
Cass, that's like really bad.
No, I don't. You're Nate, are you kidding me? No, I don't even know why she would say that.
You're lying.
Yeah, can we just table this conversation?
No,
let's go.
no, you expect me to stand here next to my best friend who's been lying to—
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar, that was the character Maddy from the show Euphoria. And I want to reference Maddy and the girl who was depicted, you know, in that clip as well, because at one point in time they were friends. But I want to depict this dynamic because this is another classic example of destiny swapping. Now, if you're familiar with the show Euphoria and how Maddy at one point in time thought that this young woman was her friend and obviously gave her intimate access to her life, this girl was able to learn about different tips and tricks that Maddy had, whether it be the way that she dressed, the way that she carried herself, the way that she walked, the way that she talked, but even her boyfriend, her relationship. Now, little did Maddy know that this girl was under her wing with the sole purpose of stealing her life and stealing her man. And I have a whole other video on my page that dissects this same dynamic from the movie Mean Girls between Regina and Katie. So obviously throughout the show, we saw, you know, Maddy and her ex-friend, and I would argue that this person was never her friend, because anybody who has no qualms, no conviction, no remorse or guilt about not only trying to emulate somebody who accepted them and embraced them and gave them intimate access to their life, but to go as far as trying to take their partner and successfully doing so, I would argue that that was a fail from jump. However, I want to talk a little bit more about the calculated cosign in respects to this dynamic, because, you know, I already have a whole video on my page that talks about destiny swapping and how a person will try to get up under you under the guise of friendship, with the sole purpose of just learning from you and essentially being your substitute, being your replacement. And I did that by reading the envious archetype listed in this book titled The Substitute to better describe what I was trying to communicate. However, in this video, I want to break it down. I want to break it down and make it plain. So if people find themselves in a similar scenario, whether you're going through it right now or you're reflecting on a friendship that you experienced in the past and you're wondering where things went wrong, how did things go left the way that they did, you trusted this person, you let them in, you were nothing but kind to them for them to just turn around and stab you in the back. I'm going to break it down into concrete stages so that you're able to pick up on these red flags ahead of time. So first things first, I want to talk about how people who are interested in emulating you with the purpose of substituting you and replacing you at a later time, they will bombard you with excessive flattery. Now, in the book on page 31, this is listed as stage 1, and this is the admiration stage, and it states adoration, inspiration, attraction. This is the stage where the envious person is seemingly enamored by you and what you have to offer. This can be your talents, your looks, your relationships. The envious person will admire these positive attributes initially. Now, I want to differentiate being inspired by somebody versus using excessive flattery, because this is often a slippery slope. And since we're talking about the beginning of something blossoming, then, you know, you have to endure that thorough vetting process so that you don't necessarily jump ahead of yourself and label somebody in a negative way that probably did have good intentions for you, but also doing a thorough vetting process to where you're able to pick up on those red flags and not disregard them. Now, when we think about someone who genuinely just admires certain qualities about us or certain things in our life, and they aspire to achieve the same thing for themselves, what differentiates them from someone who is trying to become you is they are able to acknowledge aspects of their life that they're grateful for. They don't feel this need to essentially shapeshift into whoever their muse is at the time. And a person who battles with envy often has an issue with identity, or at least having a stable sense of identity. Granted, it's common knowledge that we often pick up on certain characteristics and traits as long as we are constantly exposed to a particular friend, a particular family member, a partner, etc. It's just natural. We pick up on it subconsciously. We may start to find that we start to laugh the same, we start to dress similarly, but we're still able to maintain our own sense of identity and exercise independence and autonomy. Now, a person who is only getting close to you and they're bombarding you with this flattery and this admiration because they are trying to take from you or replace you, you will realize that they already don't have a sense of identity. And it's almost like they're so quick to jump into whatever you have going on. The key feature is they are willing, they are ready, and they're able to immerse themselves into everything that you embody and everything that you have going on. Now, once they get this access, it leads to the second stage listed in the book, and this is the coveting stage. And the book states the next stage is coveting. This immediately follows the admiration stage because this is when the reality sinks in for the envious individual. This is when they realize that admiring your positive attributes is really them trying to live vicariously through them. When they face the harsh reality, they are not you. The bitterness sinks in. The feelings of adoration quickly shift to feelings of covetousness. This stage is super important because once a person picks up on the fact, like, wait a minute, because I'm in association with this person, I would assume that I would start to reap some of the benefits, at the very least, a few of the benefits that they reap in their life because I'm starting to walk like them, I'm starting to talk like them, I'm hanging around them. Now, what they don't understand is being authentic and really nurturing your sense of identity is what causes a person to reap those rewards. But the way that they internalize it is, well, I want to take a shortcut. I want to be this person. I want their life. So if I associate myself with them, I should be seeing the same results. And once this doesn't happen, this is where they will start to become more hostile and more bitter against their target of envy. Also, too, the schemes and the strategies will start to become more blatant. And this was clearly depicted in Maddy's friendship on the show. When you're dealing with someone and you let them in, you let them into your friend group, you start calling them a friend, you start treating them like a friend, and as time goes on and you realize that they're starting to all of a sudden switch up on you, you have to understand that it's probably because they aren't reaping whatever it is that they thought they were going to reap from being associated with you. This is your sign to start getting your ducks in a row to get out of Dodge and to separate yourself from this person. Next stage in the book is competition. And it states, covetousness then leads to the next stage, competition. This is where an envious person aims to compete with a person in hopes of attaining what they have or outperforming a person they're envious of. You'll see that quote-unquote friend that's really a foe start to down talk you, insult you, and I have another video where I talked about, I was actually referencing a TikTok, where I stitched a TikTok on my TikTok page, where a woman put it so perfectly. She talked about how you have to pay attention to the things that people talk down about regarding you because that's oftentimes the area that they feel threatened by. And in my response, I pretty much just summed it up and I said, yes, it's super important to pay attention to the insults. So when we put this into the context of friendship dynamics and learning whether or not someone is actually trying to establish a friendship, a genuine friendship with us, or somebody who is trying to associate themselves with us to reap benefits or replace us, you have to pay attention to this phase, the competition phase. If they start to compare themselves to you in a negative manner, they become comfortable with insulting you, down talking to you, highlighting your insecurities, and also to interjecting themselves. If you realize that they can't just leave it at like whatever you have going on, but they have to interject what they have going on, or if they start to insult you, you'll realize that they have to interject that they don't have that same problem or they don't struggle in that area. They're always putting themselves in a comparative position when it comes to you. And this ties back to that need for identity when we talk about friendships. Somebody who doesn't have a sense of identity, this even becomes apparent with someone who is constantly comparing themselves to their friends. That isn't normal. I know that, sometimes we compare ourselves in certain situations just to gauge, like, am I on track with my success and with my goals, just for the sake of, holding ourselves accountable or our friends holding us accountable. Or maybe, if we genuinely are inspired and we don't have ill intentions in respects to our friends and our friendships, then yeah, some comparison can be healthy, but in moderation. However, if somebody is constantly comparing themselves to their friends, like it can't ever be a separate moment. Nobody can be a separate entity. That is a huge red flag. So this goes to the next stage that's listed in the book, which talks all about jealousy. And this is where we start to step into some murky waters. So in this stage, it states, when they realize that competing with the subject of envy is unsuccessful, the envious individual is then faced with another harsh reality. Competing is an unsuccessful strategy. At this point, feelings of jealousy have come to the surface. Actions will then become petty, cold, calculated, and conniving. So in Maddy's case, it wasn't just enough for this friend turned foe to start to copy her and mimic her, but now it went as far as this person entering into a relationship with her ex that clearly she still had feelings for, and vice versa, he still had feelings with her, but we're gonna dissect that dynamic later on. But this is where the calculation and the person becoming more and more conniving in an attempt to alleviate those jealous feelings starts to become apparent. So this is why I say it's super important to pay attention to the earlier signs, because once a person reaches a state of jealousy where they're blatant with their disdain towards you, this is where it's going to become difficult for you, because now the attacks are going to become more relentless. Which leads me to reading about the final stage, and it's simply envy. And it states, unsuccessful attempts on all platforms include an inability to outperform their target of envy and the inability to defeat or derail their target. Actions in retaliation will then become irate, irrational, misguided, impulsive, and sloppy. So if we can reflect on certain instances in the show, right, where old girl started copying Maddy, it was almost painful to watch. You could see that she was trying super hard to emulate Maddy in an attempt to, receive the adoration and the attention of who she was in a relationship with, which was Maddy's ex. But it was almost like she was forcing a shoe to fit, and it worked more so to her downfall than her benefit. And when we're talking about someone who wants to be you and wants your life, this isn't a humbling moment for them. They actually internalize this as an opportunity to vindicate themselves. They become more and more bitter and angry with their target, because now they feel like they have to implement some kind of damage control, especially when they feel like there's some kind of incentive involved. So this is prevalent in professional spaces. This is clearly prevalent in romantic situations, and there's a whole section in the book dedicated to damage control strategies that envious persons will use against their target, as well as talking about erotic and romantic envy. And also too, if we're talking about a professional aspect, there are so many different archetypes listed in here that talks about people who will go back and forth with you for the sake of just moving up the professional ladder. So in old girl's case, her incentive was the boyfriend. And I'm going to briefly read a section from Erotic and Romantic Envy to help people understand why dealing with a person who wants something that you have, and in this case it's a relationship, it's a romantic partnership, it becomes dangerous when you give them access. Erotic envy is often prevalent in romantic situations, especially when one is presented with the love triangle. One may be in a predicament where they are dealing with a scorned lover, an envious partner of an ex, or a competitive romantic opponent. Under these circumstances, erotic envy should not be taken lightly, as it often results in legal consequences or trigger word. I'm not going to read it. When one is dealing with an envious individual whose envy is romantically motivated, there will often be an obsession with the target. And if you are dealing with a double whammy where you were romantically involved with somebody who went as far as using someone who they knew was jealous of you and envious of you as a pawn to make you feel some kind of way, or to regain your attention and your respect and your adoration, this could be best explained by reading the section Calculated Cosine. And the calculated cosine technique states, this is designed to weaken the self-esteem of the perceived threat. The goal is to make the perceived threat back down with their tail between their legs. If the target is not perceptive, they will question their efforts, try to gain approval, and go into overdrive to gain acceptance. So when you're dealing with someone who is obsessed with you and they want your life, you have to understand that a war has been initiated. And in early pages of the book, it states this. You can't just go into situations lackadaisical, and you also have to move with your own sense of strategy. So if you peep that there's someone in your life who has tried to position themselves as a friend, or they have successfully infiltrated in your intimate circle, and you start to pick up on these signs, you need to start getting prepared to wean them out of your life, because 9 times out of 10, this is not going to end well. It is going to be hard, if not impossible, but we don't want to make quote unquote blanket statements, because of course there's exceptions to everything. But most of the time, when you give access to somebody who wants to be you, they want your life, and they're showing you signs of envy, it is not going to end well for you, babes, because they will do the unthinkable in order to achieve that goal. So understand that in this scenario, life is a game, and you have to move those pieces on the chessboard accordingly. Okay, so that was our reference, our case study for today, and also too, hopefully you have a better understanding of how to deal with someone who is trying to position themselves in your life for the sake of substituting you and replacing you. Also, you can look in the description box to get a resource to help you implement your own strategies and tactics so you can better navigate these situations. Okay, babes, I hope this video was helpful. Of course, I want to hear about you all's personal experience with someone trying to essentially steal your life, destiny swap with you. What did you do? What would you have done differently now that you have a better understanding of what was happening? Feel free to drop your comments in the comment section below. And thanks for tuning in.